Welcome back to another Deep Dive with Derek. I'm your host, Derek. My friends call me D-Rock. That means you can call me D-Rock. Now, if you're new here, and let's be honest, you're probably not new here. If you are new here, and this is your first time seeing me, tell me in the comments how that happened. How did you come across an interview with REN as my first reaction? But if you are, on the small chance that you are new here for the first time on Deep Dive with Derek, we take a deep dive into art and music and poetry and other things through the lens of meaningful living. Both the upside of life and the dark side of life. We talk about things like resilience and mindfulness, purpose, mindsets, narratives, personal values, things that we can use to grow and get to the end of our life and feel like we've found meaning in this life. REN is a great candidate for this stuff. So I happened upon this video, an interview with NME. I don't know NME, but it seemed like a good opportunity to really take a deep dive into the mind of REN. Now, if you've seen me before, welcome back. Thank you for your support. I really appreciate it. And as always, if you're new here or if you haven't yet subscribed, please take a chance and subscribe. That lets me know. It's an indication that what I'm doing resonates with people. So that would be very welcomed. So today I found an interview and I started watching it. So full disclosure, I did start it. I got maybe 5 minutes in or something, and I thought this would be something interesting for me to get a reaction to. So many of you, if you're watching this, you know a lot of history behind REN. I know some. I know way more than I used to 3 weeks ago. But I'm still kind of learning the backstory. I'm still trying to learning about everything that's going on. So this is a good opportunity for me to check it out. So without further ado, let's check out an interview with REN from NME.
I think across the spectrum, even if you're not going through something, I would like to see my purpose as a musician as being able to, exactly that, create human threads, make people feel less alone, or be able to create understanding for the people who can't really speak for themselves because they feel a little bit voiceless or they feel castrated by their condition.
It's a good intro.
Hi, I'm Nick and I'm joined by REN for the latest in NME's In Conversation series. How's it going today?
It's going well, mate, yeah.
Got an amazing new album, Sick Boy, coming out very soon. What's the overall story that you're trying to tell with the album?
So the album, for me, it was like, at the start, I'd moved away from my management at the time. I kind of felt a little bit like, it was like a new transition in life. I was planning with everything to go to Canada. I was raising money for this health treatment because I'd been dealing with an autoimmune condition, which I'm still dealing with. It was basically at this time, it was just like everything was a little bit turbulent. It was right after COVID. And I was just like, I wanted to make something that was just fun for the love of it again. I didn't really plan anything other than that. I was just like, everything has been for a purpose or everything has been trying to build towards something. And I was like, I just want to make something for me because I was so like in this space of like, everything just felt a bit so up in the air. Even going to treatment in Canada was like a big daunting thing. I had to move country to go for treatment. So I was like, I just want to do something. What I used to do when I was 13 is just go, there was never me thinking when I was 13, 14 years old when I started getting in production, when I get old, like I want to do this so this happens with my career or anything like that. I was just doing it because I flipping love sitting down, making beats and making music. So I just did that again. And I started building this album. So originally there wasn't really a through line with it. It was just...
Okay, so that's interesting. So he's kind of talking about this concept of flow, or even, well, let me take a step back. Flow is this when you get wrapped up and absorbed in what you're doing, and kind of you lose track of time because you're so wrapped up in what you're doing. For some people, this is reading a good book. For some people, this is playing a sport, going on a hike, playing music. Finding a sense of flow is a great way to find a purpose. It's a good indication of what your purpose might be. If you've got these activities for which you get lost in it, wrapped up in it, that's a pretty good signal that this is something that really speaks to you. And so then fast forward, he said, I used to do this in a way that like I didn't care. I just got wrapped up. I did it for the sake of doing it. So this was an intrinsic activity. So intrinsic means I do it for no other reason than I want to do it for myself. Another way to think about intrinsic versus extrinsic, which I'll talk about in a second, is if you were alone on a desert island, if you were castaway, would you still do it? And intrinsic has activities, intrinsic, extrinsic activities, values, personal values. Do I value this thing because I really value this? Or do I value this because I want you to think I value it, or because I want others to think I value it, or because I think I'm supposed to value it? There's intrinsic and extrinsic goals. Do I want to accomplish this thing in and of itself, or do I want to accomplish this thing to get me something else? And a great way to think about, well, just let me give you an example. Let's take music. Let's say I've got a passion for music. Music is one of my values. Music is one of the behaviors that I like to do, okay? Then you say, well, why do you do the music? And if I say, like REN, because I really like making beats and making tunes, that's probably an intrinsic value, an intrinsic activity. If I like to play tunes because I like to go to the local brewery or winery and play the tunes and I get all this attention, well, then it's not really music that I'm after. It's the attention that I'm after. And then you can keep that train going. Well, what is it about the attention? Well, I like the attention because it gets me laid. Okay, well, so it's not attention then. It's sex that gets it. And then you might say, well, what is it about that? And you can finally get down to your intrinsic value, and it might be something like community or belonging or connection or something like that. What he's suggesting here is that I used to have this intrinsic value, this intrinsic activity, and then it became extrinsic because I needed to do it for some other reason besides this.
Simply, I just wanted to make for me, and I wasn't thinking too much about it in a way, and then it just kind of grew into what it was. And then Sick Boy came because my mind was so occupied with health at the time, because everything is geared towards going to Canada, right, to undergo like almost a year of treatment. So that started creeping and leaking into the themes of what I was writing about, and Sick Boy, which is named after the title track, became one of these experiences for me as well. So the narrative changed from just doing it for myself to this kind of, it's a bit of a tapestry. There's tracks that are just fun for the love of making it, and then there are tracks that are a little bit more symbolic of the journey that I've been on as well.
At what point did you actually realise, hang on, this isn't just a collection of tracks that I've been working on, but I feel like I can put this together into an album? Did that happen quite gradually?
No, it didn't. No, mate. No, because I had tracks lying around for a little while that made it onto this one. So, and then I had a lot of new stuff as well. No, it didn't. Once I realised at a certain point, I was like, there's quite a lot of things here, and they've all got this similar feeling to them. So it almost happened by mistake. And then the album originally was meant to be 12 tracks, and it grew into 14, then it grew into 16, then it grew into 18. And I was like, I've got to get rid of some of these, because like I've got this weird thing in my head. this is a weird OCD thing. I can't release an album if it's got an odd number of songs, unless it's 11 because there's 2 double digits. This will make me sound fucking crazy. Or like 15 because that's half of 30. But insanity coming through here. But like, because 13, I can't do that. 17, nah, it's wrong. So if it moved up to 14 tracks and then I wrote one more, I'm like, fucking hell, I've got to make another song to bring it up to 16. It's the way my mind worked with it.
So
but yeah,
if straight after this interview, like inspiration struck, this amazing track came out, you'd have to make another one straight after to put another 2 on the album.
Yeah, it'd have to be 20. It could be 19. Nah, yeah, it'd have to be. But 20 is a lot for an album. But yeah, I don't know.
What track on the album do you think will surprise people the most?
I think it's probably going to be Money Game Part 3, just because that was something, I don't know, the narrative, the video concept, everything. I
It was a good video.
Films of
Check it out.
Characters who come from, it's like a growth journey where like, or a series like Breaking Bad or Scarface or...
I think I even mentioned that, didn't I? I think if you've seen my reaction to Money Game 3, when he gets into the pursuit of power instead of those pursuit of intrinsic goals and values and what you want out of life, if it becomes the pursuit of power and the pursuit of more, whatever this more is, there's never going to be enough. There's always going to be someone with more. And so this character, Jimmy, I think, started to pursue drugs and arms dealing and everything like that. And I said, this is much like Breaking Bad and many other TV shows. Because I Breaking Bad is a great example that he just talked about, because in Breaking Bad, Walter White needed 750. He had some very specific number, and it was not $1,000,000. It was $750 something thousand dollars, and he got so much more than that, and he kept going. Why? Because he was chasing the wrong things. But that's funny that he said that.
Where like, or a series like Breaking Bad or Scarface, or where you have this journey from innocence to corruption, and so much so that like when it's a bit of a villain character, you almost feel empathy for them, even though that like by the end of it you're like, this guy's a dickhead. But like by the end of it, there's still a feeling of empathy towards them, because you're like,
because you get to see the full journey. And I spent a lot of time in that reaction talking about what are known as money scripts, but that's when they're about money. But more generally, you might hear them called schemas, or just basically stories you tell yourself, narratives that we have. We respond not to what happens, but based on our interpretation of what happens, and those interpretations are our beliefs. What he's talking about is when you get a Breaking Bad or a Dexter or something where the main character is a bad person, you actually see what's happened to them. And so now you start to see, and this is why it's so weird to watch those, is you're like, almost, you take a step back and you're like, wait, I'm rooting for Dexter? He's a serial killer. This is weird. Or Barry. Right? You get to see, it's bonkers. But it's bonkers because the saying we have in the financial psychology world is every financial behavior makes sense once you know the belief that drives the behavior. When you have a series like this and they make the bad guy a protagonist, you get to see a lot more of the experiences that shaped why they do what they do.
I can see what happened on that journey that created it. And I hadn't really heard a song like that had summarized that journey. And so I was like, I really want to write a song like that. So I guess what I'm trying to do a little bit is blur the lines between film and music.
Yes.
And that's always sort of something I've lent into a little bit more. So I think hopefully that's the one that surprises people, because I got very inspired by writing it.
What's the concept for the video?
The concept for the video, it's an interesting one. It's a journey, so it's me as the narrator, but I'm also like the narrator, the character, the perpetrator, the witness, all at the same time. A bit like the first Money Game. Right. I'm sort of embodying a few different things, and then I'm walking through this warehouse. It was like, we went to the Secret Garden party. It was a boiling hot day. I managed to get like 20 extras in these hostage sacks. It was sweaty, mate.
Hostage sacks.
It was painful, but we pulled it off. But and the concept is basically it's me moving as the narrator, and it was all done in a one shot. It was moving through different phases of this person, Jimmy's life, from the point of birth to corruption, and there's themes like his dad's coming in on was relentlessly pushing him to strive for more, to be ruthless and greedy, to almost like the embodiment of like the negative sides of the American dream, right? Be ruthless and chase what you want, and it doesn't matter if like the negative sides of the American dream, right? Be ruthless.
That's interesting how he said that, the negative side of the American dream, because a lot of his songs, at least a lot of the songs that I've been drawn to, seem to I got to think about this for a second. They seem to be anti-American dream, but what I'm now catching is no, he knows that the American dream, and by the way, I'm not a fan of the American dream. Follow your dream, not any other person's version of what your dream should be. But this American dream, this is, I think, my interpretation, is the money game. Pursuing the American dream, or whatever you want to call it if you're in a different country. That's the money game, and that's where you get tripped up. And he said he's got a little bit wider perspective, and he says the negative side of the American dream. That's interesting. I'm going to have to chew on that for a while.
Ruthless and chase what you want, and it doesn't matter if you step on anybody on the way. It's just like, and I wanted to capture that because it can become quite an insidious force. So I really wanted to capture that in narrative, and so the video he's moving through, and some of the stuff we pulled off on the video, because I think it's out by the time this interview comes out, right, was really cool. Like the Secret Garden party guys were wicked, because it would be like, I'll be like, can we make it rain inside? And they were like, yeah, we could probably figure out how to do that. So I was like, cool. And then they'd go off for like 2 hours, fashion together something out of hose pipes and just make this indoor rain machine. And then we just had a lot of cool things, and we had a lot of really cool people on board. This guy Bo, who was the camera operator at the time, he just came up with some really wicked cinematic ideas for the shots where you have these crazy panning shots.
How did they do
this? All
this?
done as a one shot. It's really important that it remains visually engaging because I don't know if did you ever see the film Victoria? Right, so there's this, I really recommend it. It's like this independent film, and it's all done in a one take. It's 2.5 hours.
Is it the German film?
Yeah,
I have seen it. Yeah, it's amazing. It's
So
incredible.
good.
Yeah.
Mate, that's almost what inspired me with, because I do a lot of one take stuff now in my work.
And I love those. And the first time, and really, besides REN, the first time and really only time I've seen this was a movie called, I think it was called Birdman? Does that sound right? Whatever, I think it's called Birdman. And it had Michael Keaton in it, and it had Zach Galifianakis in it. And I saw an interview with Zach Galifianakis, and he said it was crazy bonkers. I think there's one time in there where, much like Money Game 3, when it fades to black and they make it look like it keeps going, that's a little trick where you can actually pause and do something. So it's really 2 takes, or, not takes, but 2 scenes that you're combining together. But nonetheless, Zach was saying it's crazy because if you screw up your line, if you break character, if you forget your line, if you trip, you ruined an entire, you might have ruined 40 minutes worth of take, because it's extremely difficult to stitch that together again. And he, as it's going through, he said you gotta you do your thing, you come in, you do your shot, you say your line, and then you gotta run around the camera and then come out the other side. And that stuck with me because the last video of REN's I watched was Animal Flow, and I was just picturing as they would go show these animals over here, like they'd show REN, and then this other beast would come by and they'd follow the beast, and I'm just picturing REN running around and down the stairs so that by the time they get back to him, there he is down the stairs. Super creative stuff.
I remember coming out of that, because my mate was like, oh, do you want to come watch this film? I didn't ask him anything about it. I think that was almost better. And I came out the cinema like, what the and I just see it was so good. And you forget sometimes that you're watching a one take, and then that, I feel like when it's simple like that, you almost become more invested in the story, because you can have music videos where there's so much going on and there's flash and cutting from scene to scene to scene, high budget, this, building blows up, I'm on top of a skyscraper with a helicopter. But when you refine and simplify these stories and you're just there on that journey, which I thought Victoria did really well, I feel like there's something a lot more human about it, and that's what I love. Trying to tell those stories and make them a lot more human.
When you're working on the track, are you kind of thinking of the visuals at the same time, or does the visuals tend to come later?
My mind works very much like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think because I started as a producer rather than a songwriter, I've always kind of had this 360 view, and even when it comes to the music videos as well, I'm almost imagining the music videos as I'm producing it, and they both steer each other. So I'll be coming up with the music video. So when I was writing Sick Boy, for example, there's this dialogue between me and the therapist. And the reason that came about is because I was like, this would look wicked on a music video. So it's almost like the visuals dictate the story. And the same with Money Game Part 3. There's a moment where I end up paralyzed in a wheelchair. And the reason I put that in is because I thought, visually it would be so unexpected and great if this nurse comes in and wheels in a wheelchair. So yeah, for me, it's almost like 50-50 in a way. So because I know a lot of artists, they do the music and then they conceptualize the music video, but I feel like a lot of the time, while I'm writing the songs, the music video is becoming, it's so much an integral part of that creation process.
Yeah. Are you someone who can...
I can relate to that. So I write a weekly column, Meaningful Money. Check it out if you want to, meaning.blog. But, sometimes I have an idea of what I want to write about, and then from that, I find a quote that fits, and I draw the images, I draw the sketches to make it fit. Sometimes there's a quote that I run across, and that quote inspires the entire post, including the drawings. And sometimes I just think of this new sketch, this new idea, and I'd make an entire post around a sketch. So, not to his level, but it's I like how he's talking about all the arrows point all the different ways. It's pretty interesting.
Can inspiration strike for you at any point, or do you have to kind of think, right, today's the day I'm going to go and write, I'm going to set aside some time? Like, how does it tend to work for you?
I think it works both ways, man. Because like, yeah, sometimes I'll just be like, you know, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to produce some music and I'm going to play around with things until I find inspiration. And then, yeah, other times it can just be, the time it normally mostly strikes me is when I find a new artist or watch a movie or something that's I haven't experienced before. I love finding like new artists and they do something and I'm like, damn, this is so good. And then there's almost like this inner, no, it's the Aries in me, but like this inner thing of like, I've got to make something really good. And then
For me, there's a blog called Wait But Why by Tim Urban. And that's what he's describing there is what I feel when I read his stuff.
I'll just like go off and be like, I get so inspired. It happened when I first saw Tash Sultana doing her loopy thing in the bedroom with Jungle, and it happened with a bunch of movies that I watched. But yeah, when I love those moments, or even if I see a live show, I'm like, that was phenomenal. It just forces me, I think, to strive for better if I see someone doing something incredible. So that's usually like one of the richest sources of inspiration for me, actually.
What do you see your purpose as an artist as being? Big question.
Yeah. I'd like to say creating threads of humanity between topics that are sometimes quite difficult to talk about. And I think it's interesting because what I've realized with the community of people that are resonating with my work at the moment is there's a voice for people either with chronic illness who've been with anxiety disorder, social anxiety, with it's a voice for people where, and I'm not trying to sugarcoat it and I'm not trying to make it anything other than as ugly as it can sometimes be or as beautiful as it can sometimes be. And I think by creating that window into that world, a lot of people feel seen. And I think it's really important to see people because it's a very isolating place to be a lot of the time. So, and sometimes, say it's like chronic health problem or anxiety where you don't want to leave the house or you don't want to talk to people, like having a companion in that time is a really important thing to do. And I think in mainstream music, sometimes it's an area that's not so much catered for.
Brilliantly said. So he's talking about purpose, which is one of the three components of a meaningful living, of a meaningful life. And that is having something meaningful to do with your time. And giving a voice to people is a brilliant purpose. And he's doing something called meaning making. This is the jargon that we use. When you come out of some kind of adverse event, you can grow from that. There's a book called Anti-Fragile, which uses a little different terminology, but he talks about fragility is when you fall apart. If something happens, it falls apart. Again, and then resilience is what a lot of people talk about, that gets you back. So you think of it like a squish ball. You squish this ball, and then it comes back to normal. That's called resilience. Now, if you get better because of adverse events, if you get stronger and smarter and better because of adverse events, he calls that anti-fragility. Sometimes we'll call it post-traumatic growth. And an example I use is in the biodome. Scientists created this world inside of a dome, and the first round, all the trees were floppy because they didn't create any wind. So there was nothing to push and kick the trees around. So they never had to develop any strength. Right? So trees are anti-fragile. They need to get beat up in order to get strong. He's a master at this. He's been through some shit, as you know. And he's come out the other side and saying, I want to give a voice to people that don't have a voice. That's brilliant. I mean, that's amazing to be able to take what he's been through and to create something for other people. And it's well needed. My mentor talks about there being 6 basic human needs. Safety and security. Of course, you have to live, you have to survive. But autonomy, I need to be able to feel like I'm making my own choices. I need to feel like life is worthwhile. And in the world of meaning, we call this having a sense of significance, like feeling like life is valuable, life is worth living. And then there's connection, which is having interpersonal relationships with other people. There's a sense of belonging, which is feeling like I belong to a group. But finally, there's self-expression. This is the need to be heard, the need to be seen, the need for people to know I exist, and he is helping with that.
So I think being able to cater for that. And, you know, beyond that, then people who have never gone through those things can almost have an empathy window so they can start to understand the people that do. And because I've had people reach out to me and go, oh, my daughter or my son has been struggling with depression and I didn't really understand what they were going through because they weren't able to articulate it. And I've listened to this and it's really helped me understand and sympathize. So I think across the spectrum, even if you're not going through something, I would like to see my purpose as a musician as being able to, I know, yeah, exactly that, create human threads, make people feel less alone, or be able to create understanding for the people who can't really speak for themselves because they feel a little bit voiceless or they feel castrated by their condition.
When you released REN way back at the start of the year, did you have any inkling that it would connect with people in such an amazing way? I mean, when you go on, we can talk about the stats, it's got 60 million YouTube views, but it's the comments that are really amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I kind of got stuck in a real loop reading them all because people are, as you say, like really connecting on a deep level to people, talking about their own experience, people they know. Did you have any inkling it could have that kind of impact?
I knew when I stumbled across the idea that it was a pretty unique one, but funnily enough, when I came off filming that, I was like, oh, I messed that up. Like, we came off that, because basically we were in this basement that we didn't get permission to use, yeah? Like, it was just like this guy that we found on Facebook, like legend, this guy called Will, and then he let us in this basement, but like half an hour into recording, we had everything set up, it was fine, everything was going well. The landlord runs downstairs and he goes, you guys need to get out of here right away. And we'd done one take at this point, and I was like, mate, please, because I had to go to Canada literally like 2 weeks later, and this was the only other time that we had the whole film crew access. So like, if we hadn't done this, and I've been rehearsing for it for like weeks and weeks, like meticulously trying to nail that guitar part, trying to get all the facial expressions, everything. Like I planned things to excess, and then
Isn't that crazy though? Because when I watch this, he does a brilliant job performing this because it looks like there's no practice went into it. He made this look really easy.
And then it was like, I was like, mate, please can we just have half an hour? So he gave us half an hour. And so we only actually managed to get 4 takes in. And in my head, I was like, because normally we go for at least like 15, 20 to make sure that we've got a safety one. And we didn't have a safety one. So I came away from that going, oh, fuck, we messed it up. Like, I was just like, it's not good. And then just, even when I watched the first run through the footage, I was like, oh, I'm not sure if it's good enough. But then I started editing together. And by the end of it, and by like, you know, I sat with the mix a little bit and polished the mix up, and then by the end of it, I remember there was a moment where I sat down with my mate Vic and I showed him it. He was just like, what the f did I just watch? And, and that response, and I was like,
that's what I said.
Okay, cool, good. I really, because he's honest, he'll be brutally honest with me if he doesn't like it. So, and then I sent it to another one of my friends who I really trusted, and he was just like, mate, this is going to change your career. And he was right, man. Like, I put it out there, and the traction and what it did for my entire back catalogue, what it did for, like, I guess, the trajectory of my career was pretty incredible. So, yeah, I think those responses really helped me feel confident in it, and then just that initial response from the community. And over the course of the next 3 months, it was really surreal because I was in Canada, obviously treating my health. So it's a weird juxtaposition because I'm there sitting down getting IVs 5 days a week in my arm and like going through pretty grueling treatment for autoimmune condition and post-Lyme disease. I'm just watching on the internet, the statistics go crazy, like the amount of subscribers coming in, the amount of comments, people like crazy high-level artists that I'd admired for years contacting me and going, oh, I'm really inspired by your work. And I'm like, it was amazing, but weird timing. Yeah.
When you were having your treatment in Canada, were you able to could you be creative at that time, or was it did you not have the energy to kind of think about the next step? Had to be like focus on the treatment and nothing else?
For the first 3 months, I wasn't able to, I was in a massive creative block. But luckily, so I kind of almost preempted that and had this album, Sick Boy, ready to go. And I hadn't released any of the tracks. So tracks like Animal Flow, Sick Boy, all those songs. The videos had been recorded months and months before I even left for Canada. So they were and I kind of knew this because I was messing around with new meds, sometimes like meds that affect your cognition. And so I was like a zombie for the first 3 months. I was out there pretty much while I was trying to find the right fit of medication and stuff. So I wasn't creative at all. I didn't pick up my guitar, I don't think, for the first 3 months. I didn't write any songs. I was just like, but what was cool was because I had all this back, I was able to, you know, load videos, interact with the fan base, just sit down and soak in everything that was coming with High REN. It really cheered me up actually, because it was a really isolating time, and it was really like first
really
moving
awesome
to Canada.
timing.
I was missing my mates back home and stuff, so it was nice to have like this song just bubbling and doing the things it did. Yeah, it's cool.
How's your health at the moment?
I'm managing a lot better than I was when I first, which is always the goal in Canada. So I'm on new medications, make me feel a lot more stable. I'm on a treatment regime that's lowering inflammation in my body. I've learned how to manage my health. It may be something I have to do my whole life, right? Because autoimmunity is a complex thing. I haven't quite figured out how to switch things like this off yet. And there's never any guarantees, but what I have done with this, it's a really comprehensive plan of nutrition, of medication, of lifestyle. I just feel better in my head and my body. My mind feels a lot more clear, and I feel a lot more calm, and my pain levels have gone down quite a bit. I still, mate, to be honest, like I'm still haven't got the energy of a normal person. I still have to deal with, like, even right now, my legs hurt. I still have to deal with carrying the weight of feeling a little bit crap every day, but.
And that sucks, but it just reminded me of there's I hate the word hack, but it kind of is a hack. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. I play a game, a pretty demanding sport called squash. A lot of lunging, a lot of jumping, a lot of sprinting, and it's common to get sore legs. At least for me, it is. But whatever it is, sometimes I get a pain in my head, or like a headache, or sometimes I'll get a weird pain in my arm, or some kind of sensation. And the reframe for this is, I got a couple of choices. One is I can bitch and moan and complain about my sore legs. And maybe that's a bad example, because I did that to myself, and that was playing a game. But this headache, I can bitch and complain and moan about this headache that I have, or whatever the pain is. Or I can remind myself, Derek, this isn't that bad. There are people who live with worse than this as their normal life. And just reminding myself that, it kind of like a magic trick, because now all of a sudden it doesn't feel as bad. Try that and see if it helps you at all.
It's a lighter shade of crap. It's easy to deal with.
I feel like that's a good thing for people to hear, though, because sometimes with any kind of condition, we kind of hear the story that it's all about finding a cure, whereas lots of people live with conditions that are up and down their whole life. And and there isn't necessarily like an end cure.
And I think this was coming back, linking that to High REN. That's almost a sentiment I wanted to put out there, is that when I was at my worst, it was like I was in this mindset of I have to find a cure, and I hate this, and if I don't find a cure, I just want to die, I just want everything to be over. And it wasn't really until I was like, you know what, I might have to live with this forever, but that's totally okay. Some people are out there with missing legs, some people are out there confined to a wheelchair their whole life. So these people just have to carry that burden and still try and make life the most enjoyable as it can be, because we still don't know what it means to be here as human beings. We don't know what we're doing, but I feel like one of the most important things is to make it a most interesting, enjoyable experiences despite our circumstances. You could be born into extreme poverty, you could be born into abuse. So these are just the cards that I was dealt, and it wasn't really until I really sat with that and be like, that's okay, that I started being enjoying my life.
And he's talked about that in a lot of his songs, and I've commented on it several times. You can't change the cards you're dealt, but the fact that you were born means that you were dealt some cards. And there's this big school of thought that says getting any kind of cards, getting the chance to be here, is amazing. Amazing. The number of people who have ever existed is dwarfed, infinitely dwarfed by the number of potential people who could have been here. Even as simple, and this might be weird, but it's 100% fact. You know, the fact that you exist, you know, you could trace this back to your parents had to meet, their parents had to meet, their parents had to meet, all the way down. But even to the day your parents had to decide to make love, at the exact same moment they did, that exact sperm had to hit that exact egg. If a different sperm hit that egg, you don't exist. And your non-existent sibling now exists instead of you. This is crazy. So now you get to be born, and you've got these cards that you were dealt. And you have no control over that. What you do have control over is how you play the cards. And so focusing on what you can control is the heart of a lot of things like Stoicism, for example, even things like Buddhism. Letting go of things that you can't control and focusing on things over which you have control. And there's three real main things that you have control over. One is you can control what you pay attention to. Life becomes what you pay attention to. If somebody cuts me off in a car and I pay attention to that, now my whole day is ruined. I'm pissed off all day long. What if instead I just let that go, and instead I noticed that person that let me in? Because I haven't been in this part of town, and I didn't know that lane that I usually drive in closed. There's construction. And that person let me in. Now I'm going to feel happy all day long. Life is what you pay attention to. So you choose what you pay attention to. That's in your control. You also have control over your interpretation of things. How you interpret things, these are your beliefs. You know, most of the stuff runs underneath conscious awareness. We don't know that, for example, we respond or actually react based on our interpretation of stuff rather than stuff itself. Slowing down to understand how we're interpreting these things changes how they hit us. You know, to one person, long lines at a grocery store makes me completely pissed off. To another person in the same grocery store with the same long lines, doesn't care anything about it. Because I have a different belief about how grocery stores are supposed to work at the height of supper rush or dinner rush. And then the third thing you have control over is your actions, what you do, your choices. You have control over those things. The rest of those things you don't really have control over. And there's a Venn diagram that I love. It's two circles. One circle is focusing on things over which you have control. Another circle is focusing on things that matter. Only focus on things over which you have control that matter. So there are a lot of things that matter that you don't have control over. Can you surrender? Can you find a way to let that go? You have no control over what the economy does or what the stock market does, for example. Can you let that go? There's other things that you have control over but don't matter, right? Like, I control how much time I spend on social media. Now, I guess you could argue that matters in the sense that it's generally a bad thing. But I can spend my time on things that don't matter. I can try to get revenge on that driver that cut me off, but in the grand scheme of things, that doesn't matter. We're still, like he said, Ren said, we're still trying to figure out what it means to be on Earth here. So focusing on things that we have control over that matter is very, very important. And we're all on this ride. So we're still trying to figure this out. He didn't say this explicitly. Maybe he will. We don't really know what this means. We're just trying to make this life that we have interesting. You didn't choose to be born. Now that you're here, you can't control those cards. You can't control the past. That's one thing that is out of your control. So now that you're here, you get to go a few dozen times around this star that we call a sun. You know, we're floating on a rock, spinning around a star. And we get 70, 80, maybe 100 trips, and then we got to go. Keeping that in mind changes the significance of a lot of things that happen to us. And accepting the past, accepting that maybe this is how it's going to be. Right now, this is how it is. You know, accepting that doesn't mean that we have to be a doormat. Accepting just means, okay, this is how it is. Now that I know what it is, I still have control over what I do now. I still have control over my choices now. I still have control over my interpretation of what happened. I still have control over what I do in the future. Acceptance is not wanting the past to be different. I mean, you can wish. I mean, you can get lessons. There's lessons from that. Remember, that's what makes you stronger in the adversity and the resilience. But once it's happened, it's already happened. Anyway, a lot of information there from that little sentence.
When I stopped like seeing this thing as the enemy and just started seeing it as enemy and started seeing it as a part of me, I felt a lot more at peace. But I think you can still strive for more within that. It's not just like, I'm accepting this, so I'm not going to do anything about it, because I'm still out in Canada treating it. But there's just not that pressure anymore. Because if it doesn't completely cure me, which it may not, I'm in a much better relationship with it. Yeah.
Does it affect some of the decisions you make in terms of your career? Like, would you be able to do a really big tour? Like, would you think, like, you know, I can't spend 22 hours on a video shoot, which sometimes artists do. They just kind of make it an all-nighter. Would you have to think, no, I shouldn't be doing it like that?
The video shoot, I usually shoot myself in the foot with that because I'm such a perfectionist. Like Money Game, I didn't eat all day and I was like directing everyone and I stayed there exactly until like 4 or 5 in the morning. But that's just purely because once I'm in that place, it has to be right because there's so much that's gone into it on the back end, and I'm just a massive perfectionist with those things. I don't want to mess them up. But then with a tour, there's a much higher degree of preempting you can do there. So I don't know how my health is going to be next year. It's better now than it was. So I'm just kind of going, this year was difficult. I had to turn down.
Can you accept uncertainty? That is the biggest trouble with life. Humans, our brains are not wired for uncertainty. This is why we create stories. This is why we're always assigning, why did that happen? Because to accept that it could have been chaotic and random fucks us up. And so we create these we make meaning out of things that there's no meaning there. He's making friends with uncertainty.
A slot at Glastonbury, I had to turn down slots at a lot of these major festivals, which look really cool.
Oh, really? That sucks.
Because I had to focus on my health. So it really just is, I don't know is the answer in terms of touring, but if it is something I have to manage my whole life, it probably means that I'm not the sort of artist that'll be able to go on like 60 tours. Because you see a normal person do that and they come home like beaten, bro. So like, even if I was healthy, I'd probably try and find more interesting ways. I mean, when I start touring, I want to start doing some things that are a little bit more unexpected anyway, and I want to start making these experiences
that's what I would expect.
A bit more unusual. I want to start like maybe making it feel a little bit more on the ground for the people. We did this show for the Taylor, Jenny and Screech, which was like this concept that I came up with, where we just built a stage in Brighton, car park, right? We found a car park in Brighton. We didn't tell anyone that we were planning on doing this. We built this stage out of like MDF planks and stuff, and then we I just put a post on Instagram like, we're doing an outside show, free show, secret location. You'll be met with people in balaclavas at the train station. So we did that. We put it on. Like 500 to 1,000 people showed up. They will walk to this like secret location that we had, which was actually where we filmed Screech's Tale. And we put on this show, and it was one of my favourite shows we've ever done. And the police did show up in the end, and they know me from busking. So it was like, it was just like, fuck, it's just REN doing this thing. So they were actually really cool with it, because I've always been really respectful for them. And Brighton police police get a lot of stick, but they're actually all right. And so I spoke to them about it, and they were just like, as long as no one gets hurt, we're just here to make sure, like, keep the peace. So they turned up at the end, and that was actually fine. And it was one of my. I want to do a bit more like that, stuff like that, because I've always been a little bit more. I like doing things that are a bit more disruptive. That energy of chaos about them. Yeah.
Another amazing track you've put out this year is Suicide, which came out in June. What was the story you were trying to tell with that track, and were you in any way apprehensive about putting out such a kind of powerful song?
It's funny because that song started. I actually wrote that one in lockdown, and it was just really about my own struggles with mental health. And I had this song, and it was only like 2 minutes long, and I was like, yeah, but it's still probably like quite a singly song. And then I was like, well, if I'm feeling this feeling of like apprehension, I can either just like live with that feeling, or I can do something about it. So I was like, I just sat down at the piano. I was like, I'm just going to add a section. I really liked in a lot of like Kendrick tunes, he just like switches up like halfway through a tune, and the beat just goes somewhere completely different. It's been played with more and more in hip hop these days. I've noticed that happening, a total vibe switch. And I was like, so I just did that. I just sat down on my piano and I came up with this kind of like melancholy piano that was very simple at the end of the song. And then I had that line that it's hard to take off from the ground when your wings are cut, your stomach burns when you're drinking from an empty cup. And initially it was going to be about me again, or it was just going to be about my struggles. And I just started writing, and it was like unintentionally it just started flowing out. And the story of like one of my best mates who tragically lost to suicide just started leaking out for the first time in a long time, which was kind of took me by surprise, because it hadn't been something at the forefront of my mind, because it had been a long time. I'd grieved about it, I'd dealt with it, I've moved past, I'd come to terms with what had happened, and it started coming out. So obviously there's a pocket in the me there that still had.
There's a thought, or a school of thought, that says if there's something from your past, say more than 18 months ago, that still stirs up things for you, then you haven't processed it enough. And so processing it is the process of making sense. So journaling helps. And that's easy, because you could just do that by yourself, do it in a way that nobody can read it, it'll be completely confidential. Having a good friend or a professional listener, like a coach or a therapist. The point of all this is to take this jumbled up ball of thoughts, turn those thoughts into words, and those words into sentences, and those sentences into paragraphs, and you start to organize and make sense of what has happened. And making sense is the sense of coherence. That is one of the forms of meaningful living. So trying to make sense of what has happened is powerful. And so he went through that process, and then inadvertently triggered some more of these things to come out.
Let things go, or dealt with it. And as I was writing, and as that line, I dumped my youth inside a trunk inside a pickup truck and dumped them off the same bridge, the one you jumped, because he jumped off this bridge. And I just started thinking about it. Like, I started thinking about it because it was true. It's like I lost my youth. I lost my innocence of youth the day that happened, and the feeling of indestructibility. And because you hear about people dying, but it never really pierces your veil of existence. It's never like your friends or people that you see every single day and like tell all your everything that you do to. And like, yeah, it was really weird not having around. And I do remember that altered my perception of life so much when it's taken away. It's for someone new.
It changed his view of the world. You know, that's that sense of coherence. It changes. If this is your sense of, this is how the world's supposed to work, that's your sense of coherence. When something happens that's outside of that, that disrupts us. And if something happens way outside of that, they'd call that trauma. So being flexible and altering your worldview is how you can maintain a strong sense of coherence.
Love. And yeah, it just fell out of me, and I didn't try and write it. I'd write like 2 lines, get in the vocal booth and record it, and then come back and write 2 lines. And because of that, I was crying, because it was so fresh. It wasn't like something I'd rehearsed again and again. It was so there. And I just left it. I usually with takes, I'll like do 10, 20, 30 passes of them until I get it perfect. With this one, it was always just the first pass. I'd record the 2 lines, write another 2 lines, record the 2 lines, and the whole thing came together in about an hour or 2 hours. And then I just stuck it on the end of Suicide, and I think it makes it what it is. It makes it a lot more impactful. And then worked with this amazing animator who incorporated some elements of AI into this music video. And yeah, came together, and I'm happy with it. Yeah.
On the flip side, we touched on this earlier, but when you've had moments where you have had a creative block, is that incredibly frustrating for you, because it feels like you're not doing this thing that is so important?
Well, it's funny when it's a chemically induced creative block, which is the case with the medications on my health. It feels incredibly frustrating, and I feel impotent. Like, it's like when I know my mind has the capacity to create, but a tiny little pill or an immunological dysfunctional process that's going on in my brain is creating a dam between me and this source. Because for me, creation is life. It's the life source. It's the closest thing to God that I know. And it's like when that is out of my reach because of like some chemical induction or something like that, I can't. It's probably some of the most frustrated times I've ever had. Like when I was really in the thick of my illness back in like 2015, I didn't pick up my guitar for like a whole year at one point because I was physically unable to, because I was so weak and in pain, and like That was one of the most difficult things about being ill. Actually, it wasn't even the symptoms. It was that I knew I had the ability to do it, but I couldn't do it. It was like I was cut off from my purpose, and I think that it's incredibly frustrating, I think.
Exactly. And so when you're missing one of those legs of that three-legged stool, in this case purpose, then life starts to feel less meaningful. Same way if something happens outside your worldview, that sense of coherence, things can start feeling less meaningful. And when you start to not feel like life is worthwhile, that sense of significance. Similarly. Now, totally different topic, but similar. I tend to be averse to painkillers, even aspirin, ibuprofen, for the same reason. Because I think that my body hurts for a reason. My body is trying to tell me something. And if I eat this Advil and my body still hurts, it's just that my brain can't hear it. Is that bad? I'm supposed to be limping, but because I'm tricking my brain, I don't think it hurts, and so I walk normally. I don't know. I got this weird icky sense that that's making things worse. But so anyway, similarly, he's like, I know I can get here, but there's something getting in my way, and that takes away a sense of purpose.
How did you keep going in that moment when you felt like, your purpose was being taken away from you? What kept you going?
Probably the fact that I knew it was in my capacity to do it. Because I feel like if I didn't have this, like, if I hold on, I may be able to do this on the other side. I don't know if I'd be here. Like, if I didn't have this, like, because I was lucky that I was affirmed when I was quite young that I was good at this music thing and this creation thing, because that helped me be like, even when in the early stages, like, when I get better, I'm gonna do this. When I get better, this is gonna happen. When I get better, I'm gonna do music. I'm gonna pour myself into it. And if I ever get the chance, I'm just gonna give it 100%. And I think it was that, funnily enough, the thing that frustrated me the most about my condition was the fact that I could do it, was also the thing that gave me hope. It was like this paradox.
Interesting
because then
contradiction.
Knowing that on the other side, because if I didn't have that, I'd be like, what am I really fighting for? Because then I could get through it all and be lost, because I've just lost my 20s. And I'm like, I didn't, because that was one of the difficult things as well about being sick for my entire 20s pretty much. It's like, when I started coming out the other side, I was like 27, 28, and I'm like, I don't really have the opportunity to be able to mature into this age. Like, all my mates have done all these things. They've had, like, their hearts broken, they've grown up, they've got their first proper job, they've, like, some of them got married, some of them got their first house. Like, I never had a chance to do any of those things. So I just had to land in the body of a late 20-year-old and learn to swim. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What age did you realise that music was the thing you were meant to do? Was it very young?
Yeah, proper young. I was lucky in that respect. I think I was about 10. My dad gave me this little beaten up guitar for one. I think he just came back from this car boot sale, and it's like this little trashed acoustic guitar. I just take it everywhere with me, man. Like, it was like a second limb. Like, I take it on the bus to school, I take it to the dismay of my teachers. I take it around with my mate's house whenever we'd hang out, and I just always be like, learning John Frusciante or Kurt Cobain or Jimi Hendrix riffs or whatever. I'd just be like, I don't know why, it was just like this hyper fixation, obsession almost.
What kind of music were you listening to growing up? Did you have a Britpop?
Well, he just said John Frusciante, so Red Hot Chili Peppers, Kurt Cobain, Nirvana, Jimi Hendrix, and I feel like I read somewhere, or maybe one of y'all commented, that he taught himself by slowing down, by, like, getting videos of these folks and slowing it down and then seeing what they do. Now, interestingly, is this, I feel like this is true. Correct me, fact check me on this. Take John Frusciante out, because I'm less familiar with him. Well, that implies that I'm familiar with the other two. But I think Kurt Cobain and Jimi Hendrix were both lefties, right? They play their guitar lefty. And I think in one of those cases, maybe both of those cases, I don't know why I'm getting this, like, thought in my head. But I think one of them, or maybe both, didn't have access to a proper left-handed guitar, so they took the regular guitar and they flipped it around, and so essentially they learned how to play it upside down, with the low E on the bottom and the high E on the top. I think. I don't know. Fact check me on that. I don't know where that story came from.
pop phase? Because you did the Sweet Symphony remix.
Anything good, man. But yeah, to be honest, I got into my Britpop. Like I was big into Blur. I was big into I like the Verve. At the time, I wasn't so much an Oasis guy, but that grew on me later on. I think the only reason that put me off Oasis is because whenever I try and play somewhere, someone will be like, "Play Wonderwall, mate," and I'd be like, "Fuck off." I don't want to. And but then I spent a little bit of time and I was like, actually, yeah, Noel is an amazing songwriter and Liam's an amazing frontman. And but it wasn't until later on that I kind of, at the time I rejected it because of the merciless requests to play that song, man. I was massive into it and I love a lot of Damon's work, man. I thought it was brilliant and. It was such a cool accolade, man. I did obviously Bittersweet Symphony is a British Britpop anthem, innit? It's like one of the biggest ones. So I did my own take of it. It was really just for me, man. I was doing those retakes. I did some Fatboy Slim as well, but it was really just me wanting to play around with the songs I love. I didn't really think it was going to do as well as it did, and then it was almost like my ode to. It was almost like my take of what they were trying to say. This like my ode to the contradictory nature of how beautiful broken middle class working class Britain is, like all these different contradictions that you have. There's like a lot of poetry in it, like I was saying, like you have a pregnant mum with going into a pub having a pint, and like there's something beautiful about the dysfunction of the UK. I love it. I think it's my favourite country on the planet, purely because of those things. Like that's what I grew up just mucking about on council estates and stuff, and like there's something beautiful about it for me, and I wanted to capture that. And it was really nice having so Cy from the Verve, he saw it. I got the email. It was mad. I got the email 10 minutes before the premiere, being like, "Oh, by the way, I'm tuning in to watch this premiere." I was like, nah. And then, I spoke to him on the phone before it dropped, and so there was a lot of pressure. I was like, I hope he likes this, God. And then he phoned me up afterwards. He was like, "It's wicked, mate." And it was like, "I've got this guitar on you sent you." He posted me this, like one of 3 guitars I ever made, and I've got that in my house, my baby now. And he also then we've spoken a few times on the phone since, and he's sorted me out with some Charles Bukowski books. He sorted me out with a few different bits. He's just been posting. He's just like, he didn't have to do any of those things, but I think he's been really nice, and the chats on the phone were really inspiring for me to have someone who's been through it.
Yeah.
Almost like, sort of like mentor me in a little way through, like chat to me about what to expect, what they went through, and it's cool, man. Really cool guy. Yeah.
You mentioned like you love the UK.
Yeah.
You grew up in Wales, you now live in Brighton. Why is Brighton the place that you've wanted to make your base? Because I think Brighton's a place where you see a lot of different types of, you see all spectrum of UK life in Brighton.
I think that's it, man. That's one of the reasons for sure. It's like the multicultural aspect, and then it's also the creative hub over there. There's a lot of people doing stuff, and coming from Wales, it's a beautiful place, but no one's doing anything in terms of like, the arts, in different parts of the arts, yeah, but in the music scene, where I grew up was pretty dead for what I wanted to do. So I like that Brighton's a melting pot of all different walks of life, and I like that it's so...
I don't understand any of this UK
it's a safe
geography.
space to express yourself in whatever, it's to explore it. It's got a lot of really good heritage,
England,
like the mods and the rocker scene back there, and
all these differences.
And punk and stuff like that. There's a lot of cool stuff, I think, and I don't know, when you just spend time in Brighton, especially today, you feel that it's an exciting place to be, so yeah, it suits me.
Feels like a place where anything kind of goes, you can do whatever you want there. Do you know what I
Exactly.
mean?
Yeah.
And last question, when people hear the name REN, what do you want to kind of pop into their head?
Well, storyteller is one, because that's something I pride myself on, is telling stories. Another one would probably be like counterculture, and it's an interesting thing. I was thinking about this. Counterculture, not necessarily, when people think of counterculture, they think of like opposition, revolution, and I think the world that we live in right now is pretty hyperpolarized. So I actually think politically or emotionally, whatever, but I think there's a lot of people shouting at each other, and I think social media is quite a contributing factor to that. But I think counterculture, 100%. When that is your status quo, is actually trying to find threads of humanity. So it's not actually this big aggressive oppositional force. It's like a counterculture of joint threads, communication, and knowing that even though that your opinion offends me, how can we find like this point of mediation between us? Because I think that's one of the most important ways forward for our...
Right. And if you know a comedian named Ricky Gervais, I love the way he frames this. He says, you have to stop saying that's offensive. You have to start saying, I find that offensive. And once you can do that, you can separate the ideas from the people. Now we can have real conversations.
Longevity as a species, even, like it's a very important thing that we learn to do that better. So yeah, counterculture, a storyteller. I think those two would be brilliant to be thought about.
Amazing.
Really good background for me. Good stuff to talk about and chew on in there. Let me know. I want to hear from you. Give me a like if this is something that you thought was interesting. If you're new here, consider subscribing. Spread the word if you think there's a word to spread. And I look forward to checking out more REN. Hey, D-Rock again. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy what I'm doing here. If this kind of thing is interesting to you, and especially if you like those bad drawings at the beginning, you might be interested in my weekly newsletter. It explores money's role in a meaningful life. So you can check that out at meaning.blog if you want. It takes this and it goes a lot deeper. So if you like that, check it out. Let me know what else I should be doing, what else I could be doing, and I'll see you here next time.